When historians look back at Tennessee in the middle of the 19th century, their attention usually settles on familiar images. They speak of wooden cabins rising along forest edges, farmers clearing land for crops, wagon trails cutting through wilderness, and small towns slowly forming along rivers and trade routes. It is a story of growth, determination, and survival on the American frontier. Textbooks and documentaries often present this era as a steady march toward modernization. Yet beneath this surface narrative lies another story, one rarely discussed and even more rarely investigated. It is a story that unfolded far below the ground, hidden from sight, preserved in silence for decades. In 1845, on a quiet stretch of farmland in White County, Tennessee, a group of laborers received instructions to dig a well on the property of a local landowner named William Shumet. There was nothing unusual about the request. Wells were essential for daily life. Without reliable access to groundwater, farms could not function. Livestock needed water. Crops depended on it. Families relied on it for survival. The workers approached the task with practical expectations. They anticipated dirt, stones, and eventually moisture seeping into the pit. Day after day they worked under the sun, removing soil layer by layer. As the hole grew deeper, they noticed something strange. They were digging far beyond the depth at which most wells reached water. Normally, groundwater could be found within 20 or 30 feet. But at 40 feet, the ground remained dry. At 45 feet, there was still no sign of moisture. Despite this, the men continued. Stopping would mean failure, and failure meant wasted labor. Then, at nearly 50 feet below the surface, their tools struck something solid. At first, they assumed it was bedrock. But when they cleared away more dirt, they realized it was not stone. It was bone. The discovery was confusing. Large bones were not unheard of in rural areas. Farmers sometimes uncovered animal remains buried long ago. But these were different. They were too large, too smooth, and too carefully arranged. As the workers widened the excavation, more bones emerged. A massive thigh bone. Thick ribs. A spine that seemed impossibly long. Slowly, a complete skeleton took shape. The men stood in silence as the realization settled in. The bones followed human anatomy. The joints aligned naturally. The proportions made sense except for one detail. Everything was enormous. Each part was several times larger than it should have been. The femur alone was longer than some of the workers' entire arms. The skull was wider than a man's shoulders. The teeth were thick and heavy like carved stone. Witnesses later claimed that the skull could be placed over a person's head like a helmet. Others said that several men were required to lift a single rib. Measurements taken at the site suggested that the individual, if alive, would have stood between 18 and 20 feet tall. Such a figure had no place in medical science. No documented human population had ever reached anything close to that size. Even the tallest known individuals in history were less than half that height. According to biology, such proportions should have been impossible. Yet the evidence was lying in front of them. Word spread quickly through the surrounding countryside. Neighbors came to see for themselves. Farmers left their fields. Shopkeepers closed early. Families traveled miles to peer into the deep pit. Soon journalists arrived. Newspapers published articles describing a giant skeleton discovered beneath Tennessee soil. Some writers expressed skepticism. Others expressed amazement. All agreed that the find was extraordinary. Rather than reburying the remains, the owners decided to display them. The skeleton was carefully removed and transported to a local theater. There, it was assembled and exhibited. For a small fee, visitors could stand beside it, compare themselves to it, and judge its size with their own eyes. Hundreds attended. Some described feeling uneasy. Others felt excitement. Many struggled to believe what they were seeing. Grown men appeared small next to the ribs. Children stood in awe beneath the towering frame. Measurements were posted. Accounts were written. Testimonies were recorded. For weeks, possibly months, the Tennessee giant remained on display. Scholars and doctors expressed interest. Some visited privately. Others corresponded through letters. Initial explanations were cautious. Perhaps it was an unusual genetic anomaly. Perhaps multiple skeletons had merged. Perhaps it was a misunderstanding. But no theory fully accounted for the structure. The bones were too consistent. The proportions were too balanced. The skeleton appeared to belong to a single individual. And yet, despite the attention, something began to change. Articles became shorter. Details faded. Public discussion slowed. The excitement diminished. Then, without warning, the exhibition closed. The skeleton was removed. No official statement explained where it went. And just like that, the most remarkable discovery in Tennessee's history vanished from view. The disappearance of the Tennessee giant might have been forgotten entirely if it had been an isolated event. Strange discoveries sometimes occur, attract brief attention, and then fade into obscurity. But in this case, the story did not end in White County. Instead, it echoed across the landscape of 19th century America, repeating itself in town after town, state after state, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Throughout the second half of the 1800s, newspapers from Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, and Missouri published reports describing remarkably similar findings. Farmers plowing their fields uncovered enormous bones. Railroad workers cutting through hillsides struck massive skeletons. Construction crews digging foundations encountered buried remains far larger than expected. Again and again, witnesses described bones that resembled human anatomy but exceeded normal size by disturbing margins. Many of these discoveries occurred in or beneath ancient earthen mounds scattered across the Ohio Valley and surrounding regions. These mounds had long puzzled historians. Some were shaped into precise geometric forms. Others were arranged in complex networks across miles of terrain. Their construction required thousands of hours of labor and careful planning. Whoever built them possessed advanced organizational skills and a deep understanding of engineering and astronomy. Beneath these structures, investigators frequently found burial chambers. Inside were skeletons arranged in deliberate positions. Some were laid flat. Others were seated. Some were surrounded by stone walls or covered with clay. Grave goods such as pottery, tools, and ornaments were sometimes present, suggesting ritual practices and social hierarchy. And in many cases, the skeletons were far larger than expected. Reports described individuals measuring 7, 8, and even 9 feet tall. In more extreme cases, measurements approached the scale described in Tennessee. Newspapers spoke of giants, colossal remains, and monstrous skeletons. Witnesses compared thigh bones to fence posts and skulls to cooking pots. These descriptions appeared independently in different regions, written by different journalists, often years apart. Private correspondence from surveyors, engineers, and early archaeologists adds another layer to the story. Letters preserved in local archives describe massive bones discovered during mapping projects. Some writers admitted confusion. Others expressed excitement. A few hinted that their findings were being discouraged from publication. At the same time, museums and government institutions reportedly began collecting these remains. Early museum catalogs listed oversized human bones and abnormal skeletal specimens. Federal repositories acknowledged receiving unusual materials from field agents and researchers. In internal documents, curators discussed storage challenges and classification difficulties. Yet when later historians attempted to trace these items, they encountered empty shelves and missing files. The specimens were gone. No public records described their destruction. No announcements explained their transfer. In many cases, even the accession numbers had vanished. It was as if the objects had been erased from institutional memory. As the number of reports increased, so did skepticism within academic circles. Some scholars argued that 19th century journalism was unreliable. Sensational stories attracted readers. Exaggeration was common. Without photographs or preserved remains, they claimed, such accounts could not be trusted. Others proposed natural explanations. Large animal skeletons, they said, had been misidentified. Mastodons, mammoths, and prehistoric bison had once roamed North America. Their bones, if incomplete or fragmented, might appear human-like to untrained observers. But this explanation had weaknesses. Many witnesses were experienced farmers, hunters, or professionals familiar with animal anatomy. Some discoveries were examined by doctors. Several reports emphasized that the skeletons were complete and proportioned like humans. The joints matched. The skulls resembled human skulls. The spines curved naturally. Another puzzling element was depth. Many of these skeletons were found far below the surface. Normal burials rarely extended more than a few feet underground. Yet these remains were sometimes discovered 20, 30, or even 40 feet down. Such depths suggested extreme age or deliberate construction far beyond typical practices. Why would ancient communities bury individuals so deeply? Why would such burials occur repeatedly across wide regions? By the late 19th century, the tone of reporting began to shift. Early articles had included precise measurements and vivid descriptions. Later ones used vague language. Terms like remarkable, unusual, and curious replaced giant and colossal. Specific numbers disappeared. Illustrations became simplified or omitted entirely. Some archaeological sites associated with controversial finds were placed under restrictions. Excavations slowed. Permits were denied. Official explanations cited respect for burial grounds and cultural preservation. While these reasons were valid, critics noticed that restrictions often followed discoveries that challenged established timelines. By the early 20th century, reports of giant skeletons had almost vanished from mainstream publications. Fieldwork continued. Mounds were still studied. Remains were still uncovered. But extraordinary cases were rarely mentioned. The silence was striking. Earlier generations had documented such finds openly, even enthusiastically. Why had attitudes changed so abruptly? Some researchers suspected that institutions feared controversy. Acknowledging a previously unknown population would disrupt academic consensus. It would require rewriting textbooks. It would invite public speculation. It would weaken established authority. Others believed that early researchers had simply made mistakes, and later scholars quietly corrected them. But this explanation did not account for the disappearance of physical evidence. Whatever the reason, a clear pattern had formed. Reports were minimized. Specimens vanished. Discussion faded. The Tennessee giant was no longer an exception. It was part of a much larger mystery. When all the fragments of this strange history are placed side by side, an unsettling pattern begins to emerge. For several decades, oversized skeletal remains were reported openly across North America. They were measured, photographed in sketches, written about in newspapers, and discussed in private correspondence. Then, almost without warning, the trail began to fade. The discoveries did not necessarily stop. What stopped was the willingness to acknowledge them. By the early 20th century, archaeology had become more formalized. Universities established departments. Museums developed standardized methods. Government agencies assumed greater control over research. With this professionalization came strict expectations about what constituted acceptable evidence. Anything that threatened established models was treated with caution or ignored entirely. Within this new system, the reports of giant skeletons no longer fit. Accepting their existence would have forced scholars to reconsider fundamental assumptions about human history in North America. Migration theories, settlement timelines, and cultural development models would all require revision. A previously unknown population, physically distinct from known groups, would raise questions that had no easy answers. It was far simpler to label the early accounts as exaggerations, errors, or hoaxes. Skeptics pointed out that 19th century audiences were fascinated by curiosities. Traveling exhibitions often displayed fake giants made from plaster or stitched animal bones. Newspapers sometimes promoted such spectacles without verification. From this perspective, the Tennessee giant and similar discoveries could be dismissed as entertainment rather than science. Yet this explanation failed to address many inconsistencies. Most hoaxes were eventually exposed. Their creators were identified. Their methods were documented. No such exposure occurred in the major cases. Moreover, the reports were not limited to public shows. They appeared in official surveys, private letters, and institutional inventories. Another common explanation focused on preservation. Bones are fragile. Without modern conservation techniques, they deteriorate quickly. Fires, floods, mold, and insects destroyed many 19th century collections. Over time, entire museums were lost. From this view, the disappearance of specimens was unfortunate but natural. This argument carries some weight. History is filled with lost artifacts, but it does not explain why no verified example survived anywhere. Not in major universities, not in national museums, not in private collections, not even in forgotten storage rooms. Total disappearance on such a scale is rare. Some researchers suggest that early observers misinterpreted what they saw. In deep soil layers, mineral deposits can distort bones. Pressure can flatten and stretch remains. Chemical reactions can alter size and shape. Combined with excitement and expectation, these effects might produce illusions of extreme size. But many reports described fresh-looking bones, clearly defined joints, and intact skeletons. Some included detailed measurements. Others compared the remains directly to human bodies. These were not casual glances. They were careful observations. The institutional response remains one of the most troubling aspects. Museums and government agencies are designed to preserve unusual findings. Their purpose is to document anomalies, not erase them. Yet in this case, documentation became incomplete. References were shortened. Files were missing. Collections were reorganized without explanation. Some historians believe that political and social factors played a role. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, narratives about national identity were being constructed. Emphasis was placed on continuity, progress, and clear origins. A mysterious ancient population did not fit neatly into that framework. Others argue that respect for Native American communities influenced decisions. As awareness grew about the mistreatment of indigenous burial sites, authorities restricted excavations. Many remains were reburied. Some records were sealed. This was an ethical correction to earlier abuses. While this explains part of the story, it does not explain why only certain discoveries were minimized. Ordinary burials were often documented in detail. Exceptional ones were not. The Tennessee Giant remains the most striking example. It was publicly displayed. Thousands saw it. Journalists wrote about it. Measurements were recorded. And then it vanished. No museum claims it. No archive preserves it. No verified photograph exists. It survives only in words. Today historians are divided. Most dismiss the story as folklore. A smaller group believes the evidence deserves re-examination. They argue that early accounts should not be rejected simply because they are inconvenient. They point out that science advances by investigating anomalies, not ignoring them. Modern technology could potentially resolve some questions. Ground-penetrating radar, DNA analysis, and advanced imaging could examine burial sites without disturbance. Reanalysis of archival materials might reveal overlooked details. Private collections may still hold forgotten artifacts. But interest in the subject remains limited. Perhaps this is because uncertainty is uncomfortable. It is easier to accept a simple narrative than to confront unanswered questions. It is easier to believe that nothing unusual ever happened. Yet history is rarely simple. Many discoveries once considered impossible were later confirmed. Civilizations once dismissed as myths were eventually excavated. Human history has repeatedly proven more complex than expected. The burial mounds still rise above fields and forests. The soil beneath them remains largely unexplored. Whatever lies there, whether ordinary or extraordinary, remains hidden. The story of the Tennessee Giant serves as a reminder that the past is not fully known. Some chapters may have been lost. Others may have been deliberately set aside. Some may still wait beneath our feet. Until they are uncovered again, the question will persist. Was the 19th century witnessing something it did not understand? Or was it simply telling stories it could not verify? The answer for now remains buried.